Well, the haters gonna hate, 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 and the faker's gonna fake, 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 baby. I'm just gonna make, making luck, a Dominion podcast.
Got it. Yeah.
Right. Welcome to Making Luck, a Dominion podcast. Hi, I'm Adam.
I'm Wandering Winder. Every time! Every time!
Yeah, man. We did it again.
Whoa!
That's why people keep tuning in. We're 118 episodes into this bad boy.
We haven't figured it out yet in this highly professional podcast.
And I'm going to be honest with you, we probably never will. But I think that's why people keep listening. But I'll tell you who's not listening, Wandering Winder.
Jake?
Yeah, probably him too. He's probably not listening.
Oh.
I was gonna make a smart comment about that. You remember at the end of last episode? You definitely don't remember, but I made a shout out to someone who's a friend of a friend.
Yes, I remember.
Well, Jess's friend,
right?
Katie.
Yeah.
And yeah, never heard from them. So.
Nice.
Guess they don't really listen to podcasts all that religiously, do they? Huh?
That's fine. I don't think this podcast should be a religion.
Well, me neither, actually. Thanks for bringing that up.
Way to agree with me, Adam.
Yeah. Thanks for agreeing with me.
All right,
anyway.
We'll catch you all next episode. Thanks for listening.
So yeah, anyway, if you listen to our last episode, we talked about a bunch of kingdoms, and we said that we were going to record another episode. And here we are.
Recording another episode?
I'm doing it right now.
Yeah.
And at the end of that last one, we talked about a kingdom. And now we're going to talk about it again. Do you want to read the cards in that kingdom?
Oh, sure. Great. We totally covered this beforehand, too. That I was going to read out that the cards in this kingdom were Candlestick Maker, Coin of the Realm, Native Village, Amulet, the Odysseys, Bureaucrat, Militia, Emissary, Wild Hunt, Expand, with the Event Desperation, the Ally League of Bankers, and the Way of the Otter. Once more, for our audio-only listeners, that's Candlestick Maker, Coin of the Realm, Native Village, Amulet, Odysseys, Bureaucrat, Militia, Emissary, Wild Hunt, Expand, Desperation, League of Bankers, and Way of the Otter.
All right. So last time I think both of us agreed on opening double Amulet.
Yeah.
Getting pretty thin pretty fast, about as fast as possible, picking up some coins of the realm on those Amulet hands.
And getting a Militia.
Yeah, getting a Militia relatively early.
Yep.
We had a little bit of back and forth on how we wanted to draw cards using Emissary or Wild Hunt. I had leaned pretty strongly towards Wild Hunt. You made a case for Emissary. I waffled and then decided to stick to my guns.
Yeah.
And I said that Wild Hunt was good. And I think we both said that Expand would be part of the payload. I think I said Expand would be the focal point of the deck.
Yeah, you were big into Expand, and I was like, yeah, maybe I'd get one. It's kind of whatever, right?
Yeah, and I think both of us poo-pooed the Odysseys. We said question mark and then said probably not.
Yeah. And we didn't think League of Bankers was going to be important.
Yeah, I thought that because it's just so hard in general to gain favor tokens with Emissary, especially a large amount of them. And I thought, if you want Emissary at all, it's because it can be non-terminal more than those favors. I just never really thought those favors could add up. Right. But I thought, Wild Hunt has such a good upside. You probably just want to get a bunch of them because, the more of them you get, the better they tend to be. And the points can be pretty good. Then we played some games.
Yeah, and it turns out it's not that hard to get a lot of favor tokens off of emissaries here.
Yeah, it turns out that Emissary, getting favor tokens from Emissary has just about everything possible going for it here.
Uh-huh.
The strategy is, you draw your deck, and then you gain a thing and you play Emissary to draw it, and then you gain another thing and you play Emissary to draw it.
Yeah.
And potentially, you could do that probably twice per turn reasonably. And then if you got militiaed and you had something in your discard pile, sometimes you could even get like a third Emissary on a turn by drawing through what you had discarded for the first one and then doing the gainy, drawy bit 2 times.
Yeah.
And that was a thing that happened a lot more often than I expected it to.
Yeah, it also happened more often than I expected it to, and I thought it was going to happen some.
Yeah, and then on top of that, it turns out that old map also works very well in the same way that, like, well, if you don't get militiaed, or if you want some non-terminal way to put something in your discard pile, I mean, it doesn't work once you've drawn your entire deck, but you just do it at any point.
Right.
And that's another way, if you didn't get militiaed, or if your draws work out where you had to like trigger shuffle earlier on, you didn't start from a clean shuffle. Old map is also there for you to make your emissaries turn on.
Yeah.
And it turns out that by turn 10 to 12, you can have 12 favors if you have somewhat reasonable draws.
No,
And
you can't. You could have 13 favors, though.
Okay, sure, yeah, it's pretty difficult to get exactly 12 favors, but anyway, that's really good. I mean, that's insane, just having $3 every turn, and that number
It
continues
just keeps
to
growing
grow.
like so
And-
fast. Once you get going, it accumulates by a magnitude.
Yeah, and it's also like you don't have to play any cards to get that money, so that has extra synergy with Voyage.
Yes.
Your Voyage turns get a lot better when you just have $6 at the start of your buy phase without playing any cards. That's pretty stinking good.
Yeah.
Also, expand naturally have the synergy with Voyage. So, turns out Emissary was just way, way, way better than Wild Hunt. It's because you get so many favors. And,
also
even after this. Yeah, go
Also,
ahead.
the non-terminal thing mattered, right? Because, like, you don't want to have to play, like, 4 coins of the realm every turn or something. And you probably want to draw a lot of cards. So, like, having half your emissaries be non-terminal is pretty nice.
Yeah, I think stopping to get an old map while you're, like, thinning and having these, like, low $2 or $3 hands, that's certainly reasonable. Stopping to get a militia is a thing that sometimes happened that didn't seem to make all that much of a difference.
Yeah, I think Militia was probably a card that I wanted, but it was not at all a priority.
Yeah, I would rather draw cards. Because the drawing cards gets me money every single turn for the rest of the game, right?
Yeah. And then some of the question I had is, like, how aggressively do I trash? And I definitely want to trash for a while fairly aggressively, but compared to, like, getting more emissaries, right? Would I rather trash a copper or take a money so I can buy an emissary? And the more I played, the more I'm like, well, I think a lot of these cases I want to take an emissary. But it really depends, like, what is your deck size? Is the emissary going to trigger? How many coins of the realm do you have? Blah, 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 blah.
Right. That's a complex decision.
Yeah.
As I think it would be. And I think keeping the copper and getting the emissary is probably the best thing to do a little bit earlier than what my instincts would tell me to do.
Yeah. But not like 2 coppers, and I think not like an estate. Like, if it's that early, I'm
Yeah.
trashing.
Estates are really, really dumb, so I don't
Yeah.
want them.
Yeah.
Didn't find any time for Native Village or Bureaucrat.
I think
Desperation.
I think I took a native village once, but it's because, like, the coins of the realm were running out, and it's like, well, I want another. Or maybe it was like there was 1 or 2 left, and I just wanted to, I don't know,
Didn't want to make the pile too low.
pile low or something. I don't remember, but it was like, yeah, it's the 6th village or whatever. But yeah,
Right.
Candlestick Maker, though, I don't think we were necessarily very high on it last time. It's a card we wanted because we wanted plus buy.
Plus buy.
Yeah.
At some point you get it after you have enough coins for a minute.
Yeah.
Anyway, and also, you made a comment last time about how so many of these games are going to be decided by, Amulet luck on turn 3, turn 4.
Yeah.
And I really think that only one of the games that we play tested was resigned that early for that reason.
Yeah, although I think we got an inordinate number of times where we just like drew the same. Like
Yeah,
like
you
we
could
had
be
like
right about
we
that.
had like 3 games where we both got it both turn 3 and 4, and then one game where both of our decks just completely didn't want to do anything for us, but it was the same for both of us.
Yeah,
And
and
besides just the amulet luck, it did seem like somebody got a better draw than the other, just kind of randomly and ran away with it most of the games. But it's
yeah,
just
except that first one where I
a
just kind
little
of
bit
did random
later.
stuff and played poorly. But other than that, yeah.
It just happened to be like a little bit later, like somebody's emissary activated or somebody else's terminals collided, like turns 5, 6, 7, that kind of range. Because once you get rolling here, it just really snowballs. So it doesn't take much of an advantage to do that.
Sure. Yeah, but I mean, even if we got lucky in the sense that we didn't have to deal with that as much as we probably should have, I'll take it. And I'm going to poo poo your pessimism just a little bit. So, poo poo.
Great.
So, you want to talk about some other stuff?
Well, for our main topic this week, we'll be real professional and use a voice like this while we go over the second edition cards now that we've had a chance to play with them a bit. Our second look at the second edition cards that came out this year. That's 2022, because I know most of the listens are going to be, many years, decades, centuries, millennia in the future. Yeah, we're talking 2022 here. The second editions that we are discussing are those for Prosperity and Seaside, and I guess we're also talking about not just the second editions, but what was the Allies? It's called Allies, right?
And also the Hinterlands second editions.
Yes, my brain works real well.
Yeah, so we've given our first impressions. I've done those on the podcast. I did the Allies' first impressions with Jake, and then Wandering Winter had his own like hot takes of the Allies cards when those came out.
Takes.
And then Jake and I, or not Jake and I, we did the Allies. Wandering Winter and I did
The second
first
edition.
impressions for all of the second editions in 2 podcasts that we'd done previously.
Yeah.
When each of those things was released, I took a poll of like what the community's first impressions. Actually, it was just when Allies was released. I didn't get first impressions for the second editions. But then recently, as in since the last episode of the podcast, I reopened the poll and we got new numbers to see if the community's opinions had changed radically on any of the cards. Spoiler alert, there weren't any huge changes. Not a huge surprise. I think a lot of the community's ratings were okay-ish, and the ones that weren't are still not. But in any case, where we disagree, at least with each other or maybe with our previous selves or with the community, we've taken all of the cards that have relevant things to talk about and nice juicy disagreements, and we're going to talk about them now.
Hey, Adam, I know you said you didn't think the community's opinions changed that much, but I'm sitting here looking at a card where their rating changed a whole 0.04.
Wow. That's so much.
Yeah.
I stand thoroughly corrected.
All right, we're going to start with the Otters here.
Yeah, I have them in alphabetical orders. Deal with that.
So you'll know which ones we're not talking about once we get to one, and it's alphabetically different. Hey,
I suppose, yeah.
that's really remarkable. The one that I wanted you to add was last alphabetically.
I know, that was pretty sweet, huh?
Nice.
Yeah, so Augurs is the one with the Herb Gatherer, the Acolyte, the Sorceress, and the Sibyl. I think the main thing that we want to talk about is I am giving this a 7 and Wandering Winder is giving it a 4.
Yeah.
And my rating didn't change. I'd given it a 7 before. I still think this is a 7. So Wandering Winder, seems like you think that a junking attack is bad, and that seems like a strange concept to me.
Well, it's not that I think that the junking attack is bad. I guess I want to talk about these cards in a really weird order. So the card in here that I think is like bad is Acolyte,
I'm going to agree with that.
which is
That's
like
transmute.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right?
Gives me transmute vibes.
It's like transmute, and it's like you're not getting the. I mean, I'm sure you can contrive a scenario, but you're not getting this pile because you want acolytes. Like, I don't know, I think I've gained an acolyte before, but it wasn't good. It was just like a thing.
The nice thing is it has that small castle thing where like you can get it when what you really want is something farther down in the pile, and then you can just play the acolyte to trash itself and then gain the new thing.
Yeah, somehow whenever it feels like most of the time when I've seen someone play an acolyte, the card that's been on top of the pile is still been acolyte, and
And
it's
that
like
sucks.
womp womp.
Yeah, that's definitely sad trombone territory because like that is most of what acolyte is good for, and
So great, we
don't
agree
get
that
to do
acolyte is not the exciting card here.
not exciting.
So sorceress, I would think that would be good. It's a little bit hard to set. Well, I mean, Sybil is the. I guess the point I would make is usually, this isn't always going to be the case, but usually by the time that I can give out curses with this, at that point, it's not as exciting. Right? So like it takes some doing to get sorceress uncovered and then gain it and then have it set up to where you can guess correctly, semi-reliably. And by that point, like my opponent, if I'm the one who's gotten the sorceress, usually has, not always, but usually has some kind of deck control that the curse isn't going to hurt that badly. Which isn't to say that the sorceress is valueless. It's still a fine card, but it's not as exciting as if you just have like a pile of familiars that cost 5.
Sure. I mean, I just think that what you're comparing it to, a pile of familiars that costs 5,
Yeah.
junking that you can do early. That's some of the most powerful stuff that exists in Dominion. So
for
I
sure.
think there's a lot of room to be worse than that
and still be
still
fine.
be good.
Yeah.
Like I mean that's the kind of stuff I rate a 9 out of 10. Or I mean a pile of familiars that costs 5 would probably be a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
And I'm not giving this
Really good.
that.
Sure.
I'm giving it a 7 because I agree it's definitely worse than that. I still think that late junking matters. Like Black Cat, that's something that everyone underestimated, except for me.
Black Cat.
But actually, that's something that I do want to address. So in previous
Black Cat is really good.
Well, I mean, Black Cat is great.
Okay,
it's
great.
a cat, first of all, but here's my wife heard that and she just meowed from upstairs. I don't think you can hear it.
I could totally hear something. I didn't realize that was your wife. I thought it might have been an actual cat.
I'm really excited that I get to spend the rest of my life with her.
You can tell her later that I said that her cat impression is really excellent.
That you thought it was an actual cat?
Yeah, like I didn't realize that it was her. I thought it was like an actual cat
There you go.
off in the distance.
High praise.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point I was going to make is for all of these times in the past on the podcast, and I've gotten this feedback before on podcasts and blog posts where I've like revisited my first impressions. Well, there's a reason that I used to not publish my first impressions until right next to the revisited, and that's because I had done a lot of play testing. My first impressions at that time were not really my first impressions. I played a ton of games with a lot of these cards and been a part of balancing them. Okay? So yeah, of course my opinions didn't change all that much. And then I would go and revisit them and agree with myself. And, a lot of times I would say the community's wrong, and then the community figured it out and got closer to me. Okay, great. That's kind of unfair, though, because I was a player. That is not the case. That was halfway the case with Menagerie, and not the case at all. My opinions definitely have changed. Not necessarily on Augurs. but on more of these cards than what we're used to seeing, and it's because of that. It's because my takes now are about as refined as my first takes would have been at that point. In any case, with all that said, Herb Gatherer being plus buy, you don't want to open with it, that hurts, but I think a lot of boards you're going to pick it up for that reason, and I think late junking matters. I think I would, even if I didn't want the Herb Gatherer all that much, I would still want it on a lot of boards just for that late junking. And it's also a draw.
So here's, I guess here's my issue.
So like
Sybil is
4
nice.
just seems way too low. Go ahead. Sorry.
Here's my issue is it's all about, and this is some of it's the weird thing with the split piles, and this is going to come more into play when we get to the forts, I think. But it's like when I'm looking at how I evaluate the pile, the number one card to me is the top card.
I agree.
Is the most important thing. So like,
you really want to be able to open with it.
I don't think I want to get Herb Gatherer very often just to rotate to the other augurs. Like, it will come up sometimes if my opponent is really not set up to use... Again, I don't think this comes up as much with the augurs. If they're really not set up to defend against sorceress or something, and I can make good use of the sorceress, and they can't, then maybe I'll take an Herb Gatherer later. But, or, same thing if I can make good use of the Sybil and they can't for some reason, although that's really hard to imagine for Sybil, because, like, what deck can't use a Sybil, right?
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said, by the way.
So then the question is, like, how good or bad is the Herb Gatherer is the biggest determinant of this pile for me. Because, like, I think we're pretty close. Like, if the sorceresses get uncovered, I'm usually going to take one. It's just, like, how much work do I want to do to uncover them? And I certainly don't want to, like, take acolytes very often. So the question is really about the Herb Gatherer. And so that if it's the only plus buy, I think it's quite good. If you're, like, in a thick deck where you have a couple of really good treasures, like some Philosopher's Stones, that's a half joke. But, like, you got a platinum or two or something and your deck is really big and junky and whatever. Then I think Herb Gatherer can be a good card. And between those, I don't know, maybe I could come up to, like, a 5. But it's hard for me to go higher than that because I just think usually, like, some other card's going to be better. Like, a lot of times I feel like Herb Gatherer is kind of like a messenger, roughly in strength.
Okay.
And it's just not that exciting to me.
So when I hear you talk about this, I think maybe there's a difference in the way we're approaching it. So, like, you're saying that because it doesn't get gained in a lot of games, it's not as good.
Yeah.
But I think that even if this card doesn't get gained, much like other late junking cards like Sea Hag, for example, where you might not get it, but if your opponent leaves themselves vulnerable to it, you pick it up later and do some late junking.
Adam, I have some bad news for you.
What?
Seaside 2nd edition.
I don't want to think it.
Yeah, so I just don't think... So Sea Hag, you could, if your opponent wasn't set up for it, you could get the Sea Hag and start junking them. Well, if you got it with, like, a workshop, you could start junking them right away. Or if you had to buy it, you could start junking them the next turn, right? With the Herb Gatherer case, I have to get the Herb Gatherer, play it to rotate, play it again to rotate again, and then I can get the Sorceress, and then the next turn I could start... Like, it's like a few extra steps, right? That's why I don't feel like that scenario comes up as much with this pile. You also have...
You're still getting stuff from your Herb Gatherer along the way.
Sure.
The Herb Gatherer cycles you, whatever that means. And the point I was trying to make is that even if the Sea Hag is never gained on that board, because both players have played properly and thinned a little more than normal because of the threat of Sea Hag, that still affected the landscape of that game. And I think this pile can do the same thing, and I'm willing to give some numbers because of that. Right? That number 7...
Some numbers too. It's just my numbers are a little bit lower. But I mean, I think we We understand each other. We just have a slight difference on how impactful this actually is.
Okay, whatever that means, but yeah, sure.
You think that it's like 2 to 3 points better than I do.
Yes, whatever that means. I agree.
Exactly. Want to move on to the next card?
Yeah. The next one is Barbarian, and everything was a 6 except I changed my rating to a 9. So I gave this a 6 before, and I'm changing it to a 9. And everything else is just 6 all the way down. Wandering Winder, the community, it's all 6s.
Yeah, you wanna talk about why you think this is a 9 now?
Yeah, and actually, I think you can just go back and listen to the podcast that Jake and I did on Allies, and you can just listen to what he has to say. I wasn't really putting that much stock in it, but I think he nailed it. Like, he was describing a situation where if there's a threat of being able to play multiple of these in a turn, like 2 or 3, you can get to a place where you're tearing your opponent's deck down faster than they can build it up. And so there's the threat of the nightmare situation, like the nightmare with a K situation.
Yeah.
And so that's something that you have to play around basically at all times if that threat exists. Even if the threat doesn't exist, though, you can just get some of these and really annoy the crap out of your opponent. And yeah, I think that's totally right. I think this is just that powerful in the case where you can play multiples, or even in the case where you can only play one, which is what I think it has over Knights.
Yeah, and I think I might like this stronger than Knights. I don't know what I would give Knights now.
I would give it less than a 9, that's for sure.
I would definitely give Knights less than a 9, yes. I also give this less than a 9, though, because I'm still giving it a 6. Like, I think this card is good. I just don't think that it's as overwhelmingly impactful as that all that often. I think it's usually that annoying case that you talk about, where it's like you get a couple of these and, man, that's really annoying. Then they hit my thing, right? Which is good. I just, that's not 9. That's not why you're giving it a 9, right? You're giving it a 9.
That's the worst case
that's the
for
low
this
end,
card,
right?
Yeah.
And for me, just the high end just isn't present enough for me to want to give it as high as 9. But in those situations where it's like, oh, I was just playing big money, and then my opponent got 4 barbarians they played like, it has the word attack on it, right? You do need to respect it.
Right, it's an attack that stacks when you play it multiple times in particular.
Although it is kind of hilarious when they trash your curse and give you a curse back. And then all the curses are gone and they trash your curse and it's just good for you. But, like, usually by the time that's happening,
you've already lost the game.
Well, either you've already lost the game or there was some other cursing attack which makes this, less good.
I suppose, yeah.
Like, if Witch is out, Witch is better than this, which is part of why I don't think this is like a 9, but whatever.
I mean, Witch is
a 10.
High 9.
Yeah.
It's a high 9, and I would say this is definitely a lower 9 than Witch, but I don't actually know what that means. In any case, I don't have anything more to say about this card. I mean, you've said your disagreements, and I think those are reasonable, but, like, I don't know. I still think this is that, and you use the word overwhelmingly impactful that much of the time. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I think this is. I think this is overwhelmingly impactful that much of the time, and I give it a 9.
Want to talk about a card that I think can be overwhelmingly impactful?
That much of the time?
For certain values of that much, yes.
Okay.
Which is Berserker. Berserker, which you initially gave a 6, and I think I gave a 6.
Yes.
Now you're giving an 8, and I'm giving a 7.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot to say about this. I have, it's just a word of warning. Remember, you've got to have an action play for the on gain effect to trigger.
Yeah.
And discard it, like the militia discard to 3 attack is really brutal.
It hurts, man.
Hurts a lot.
Yeah. I think the underestimating the militia attack is something I do. a 6 rating for this card certainly takes that into account. But I think the reason I bumped it up so much is because I didn't quite realize until I played some games with this card that the kind of deck that you want to attack your opponent with Militia and the kind of deck you want to gain, like, have a workshop in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Are you
That's like,
often the same deck?
yeah, and like I did, you look at it and you're like, oh well, workshop and militia, they do two completely different things. But like, I want those in my deck. I want that in my face, in my life.
When I'm building, I want to slow my opponent down and gain stuff. Hey.
Yeah, man.
And I guess
that's just so good together. It's
the
like butter and jelly.
the other thing that I will say is it can be really brutal sometimes when it's like, I hit 5 first on turn 3, and I made you discard, and now your growth is stunted, and I'm sticking my tongue out at you.
Yeah, just like the good old days. With
I
militia.
still don't think that this is a
Customers.
realistic fighting style with the sword in the left hand and the axe in the right, but whatever.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with that. All right, next up is contract. Contract. It was something that I don't think anyone changed their opinion on, but I have it in an 8.
And I have it at a 5.
5, and the community has it
at a 5.64. And clearly somebody changed their rating on it because it used to be at a 5.75, and that's a whole 0.11 difference, Adam.
Yeah, I mean, the survey could have had a different number of responses each time, so...
Yeah, but
anyway.
math.
Yeah.
QED,
math.
Adam, QED.
So I was looking at... I need to put the little square at the bottom. That's what people at my grad school did when they ended a proof. They didn't write QED. They made a little square, like a subscript square.
Yeah. Was that this? I thought there was a different... Okay, I believe you. There was some symbol.
I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that's what they did at
No,
grad
there
school.
was. I thought that was like 3 squares is what I wanted to say is like a symbol for QED. 3 dots.
I've heard of 3 dots, but this was a square.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting. Anyway, I was reading your notes about this card. I want you to read them because I think it's amusing.
So my notes on this were, I suspect the difference is largely about how good are favors, to which I kind of throw up my hands in the abstract. The other parts of the card, that reliability and or the village effect can be nice. That's really bad grammar. The reliability and or the village effect, those can be nice, but they're not often great. Like, I don't think that's why you gave this an 8. It's because like, oh, well, it's a silver that like it makes you a little more reliable. Like, you'd give that what, like a 5 or a 6 probably, right? If it weren't for the favor, and like the favor is what's getting you to an 8, right? I don't know. You can't really rate them.
So, I mean, this is a very small difference, but in my mind, it's actually reverse.
Oh, really?
I think the big difference is the fact that, like, this is a silver and it's a village in the same card.
Okay.
The favor maybe takes it from a 7 to an 8, like a high 7 to an 8.
Interesting.
But I think the fact that this is a village, and it yeah.
No, go ahead.
And it plays the card at like the best time to be playing a card on your turn, which is the start of your turn. Now, granted, I guess it might be better to play it on your current turn, but like this is a village, and it's. I feel like I'm more warm on treasure villages than most people, like the scepter and the crystal ball, and we'll talk about crystal ball, but like, the treasures that can be villages. I think I'm a lot warmer on those than most people for some reason.
Yeah.
Like, this is a silver.
Yeah.
And this is a village.
Yeah, I just
so
like I feel like probably then the difference is less what I thought it was when I wrote the notes, and more that the exact thing where you said, I guess maybe you'd rather play it this turn, and that's when I look at this what I think. I'm like, I'd rather play the card this turn rather than contract it away for, like, now sometimes that's not really a reasonable thing, or sometimes you really want reliability.
Out of actions, like, man.
It's nice. It's nice to be able to contract whatever. I just, like, for a 5-cost card, I wanted to do something more than that to get me to 8. But anyway, maybe I'm just greedy. I want all my cards to be, like Mastermind or something.
All right. Well, I mean, I like Mastermind. I keep
Yeah.
my randomizer right here at my desk. It's right here.
Nice.
It's not weird. All right. Let's let's talk about the next one. Yeah.
Corsair. Yeah, so you went from 6 to 7. I went from like 3 to 4. Community is at 4.6.
Yeah. So kind of in the middle. A little
Yeah, a little closer to me, but in the middle.
closer to you, but still in the middle. I think.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Um, right. I suspect that our difference now is similar to what our difference was before, which is like we both think that it can be really good when you want to be playing a lot of silvers and golds, and that somehow still doesn't make me impressed with the card, but it makes you really impressed with the card because when that's the case, this card can be totally dominant.
Absolutely, and we had this exact conversation in the last episode, and I think I kind of thought that this is a difference in the way our mental models of the game work,
Yeah.
and how we assign importance to things. Like this is something that you need a tool in order to overcome.
Right. Whereas I'm
So
thinking
it gets a higher number.
which is absolutely true, but for my mind, it's if I play a bunch of games, that tool, I think, usually exists, so it gets a lower number for me.
Sure, and if usually is a high or low enough number, then that can definitely affect the way I give it,
Right.
the way I rate
Sure.
the card, and I don't think it was high or low enough in this case for me to think
Right. It's not like
differently in a fundamental way.
it's not like this is as rare as oh well, this is bad if there's no actions on the board, so King's Court can't be all that good. Like, come on, King's Court's a 10 because yes, you need something to be able to king, but like there's almost always good actions, right?
Yeah, it's like over 90% of the time you have something, and when you do, it's like, oh, this is ridiculous.
Right. Whereas it's less often that this card is good more often than King's Court is bad. We'll put it that way.
Sure, yeah.
It's just like a matter of how much, and who knows. I've still not played like 500 games with this card. I played like, I don't know, 20 or something.
Yeah, I feel like if we rolled 10 kingdoms with this card in it, we would disagree on at most one of those for like how good Corsair is.
Probably disagree on about one, but yeah, whatever.
At most one. Yeah. I could see 0. I don't know. Anyway.
The main event, Adam.
Yeah. So, let's talk about Crystal Ball. Last time I had it as 8, and you had it as a 2. And the community has rated the card 6.13, and therefore I win. I was closer. The end.
But now I'm up to 5, and you're down to 7.
I went down to 7. He's up to 5, and I just want to. Okay, so this is. Have you ever seen that movie called Hitch with starring that guy that I used to like until he punched Chris Rock in the face?
I have seen that movie Hitched that starred Kevin James, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Kevin James
that guy was really important,
was the secondary lead guy, right?
Yeah, who now is the lead guy in my. Anyway, there's a scene in that movie.
Paul Bart Malklop. I can't speak real. Paul Bart Malklop. That's really good at not spoonerizing your words, Wandering Winder.
Yeah, just I was gonna say the same thing. So anyway, there's a scene in that movie where Hitch, the dating coach, is trying to teach this guy how to go in for the first kiss, right?
Yeah.
And his advice is, you got to go 90% of the way, and then you got to let her go the last 10%. Okay?
I remember that.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the most iconic scenes in the movie, other than like the first scene where you get to see part of Will Smith's butt. But anyway,
I genuinely do not remember that one, but I remember the 90% of the way last 10% thing.
Yeah. So anyway, I feel like you're Hitch and I'm the girl.
No, you mean I'm Kevin James and you're the girl.
Sure. I'm the girl here. I'm gonna go the 10%. You gotta come you gotta come the 90%. And sometimes you gotta do a real slow. But that's the way it goes. You've gotten most of the way there. You just
Yeah,
have a little
I
bit
don't.
ways to go.
So I think the remaining difference, a lot of it is about you value the village effect, and I'm like, man, this isn't a reliable village except in weird cases. Although I totally saw a game where that was the village earlier today. Um,
Yeah.
because it's
I
just not
think
like
the village
reliable.
and the trashing is
Yeah.
something I'm a little more warm on than you.
Oh, I think the reason I came up from 2 to 5 is mostly because I value the trashing more now.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a change.
Um,
Glad you see the light, man.
and
A crystal
and
ball
the
can help
reason
reflect
why
the light.
we're still 2 apart is because I still don't value the village that much, and you probably do.
I think maybe in general I value villages more than you when it comes to giving a number to it.
It's possible. It's possible.
Yeah. But anyway, I don't want to argue for 45 minutes about
No,
this, so
I'm
I'm ready
ready
to
to
move
move
on.
on to the
Yep.
previously teased forts.
Yeah, all right. Let's talk about forts.
Yeah, so you went from an 8 to a 5, so I'll let you explain that in a second. I'm on a
Yeah.
4. I don't know what I was, what I would have given. I guess I didn't give number ratings before, but like
Yeah.
the 4 is probably higher than I probably would have started it even lower than this because like it was kind of junky. Uh, but
Yeah,
yeah,
so
you wanna go ahead
you
and
gave it a
explain?
4.
Yeah,
The community went from like 4.5 to low
5.
5.
Yeah,
And I was at an 8, and now I have come down to what everyone else said. I was definitely too warm on this, and I was definitely too warm on it because of Tent, right? I just straight up thought Tent was a lot better than what it was,
right.
because and the reasoning behind that is because if you're going to open with Tent and a non-terminal card, then Tent is great. I'm happy to open with another thing that isn't terminal and my Tent, and
And I don't know if I would say great, but sure, go ahead.
that seems just fan fiddly tastic, right? The problem is I never want to do that. I care too much about my terminal space, and that means I want a silver instead of a Tent. And
Yeah.
that means I don't want any of the other garbage that's in this pile. And I'm going to go ahead and say that it's all garbage. Like, it's just not that great. Like, Garrison draws cards. Woo! Hillfort draws some cards. Okay, whatever, man. I don't care. I don't really care about any of this. 5 out of 10.
So
I was really excited about Tent. Jake had this great thing that he said in that episode that I'm not going to repeat. Anyway, that's it.
yeah, so I have played like Tent Money. It was like Tent Horde Money, maybe, where it was just
Yeah.
like every turn I played Tent from like turn 3 through the rest of the game because I just always kept putting it on top.
Yeah.
And
Seems pretty good.
I won that game. It's not, but like the board was so weak that it was good enough. uh,
Yeah.
but like Tent is bad because you want to play other terminals and you don't want to have to get an extra village just for that Tent effect. And like if you're trying to draw where you need to play like village and smithy or whatever, you don't
if
want
you're
this
trying
on
to
top
do-
of your deck.
If
You
you're
want it
trying
on
to
the
do
bottom.
anything where you're not happy to have just a terminal silver be the entirety of your action phase,
Right. Pretty much.
which is any good deck ever.
Right. So like if you have a
And to
terrible
be-
deck where it's just like Tent and Horde and you just buy yellow and green cards, fantastic. Get a Tent, man.
Let me just say that I was never advocating
Yeah.
for top decking your Tent after like maybe turn 5 or 6.
Yeah, yeah.
ever.
Except
never
for, like,
thought that was a
some
good
weird
idea.
corner edge case where it's like, oh, well,
Capitalism and merchant camp, or all
or
any other
like,
garbage.
you know, you just need to be able to hit 2 to win the game next turn. So,
Woo!
yeah. So I think that Garrison is incredibly strong. And this is where it comes in where I talk about, and this is, I think I would have given it a 3 before and I'm giving it like a 4 now. Like, you do need to build, like, if you're like, oh, well, there's no draw on the board, so I'm just going to play some, like, dopey money deck because even though there's great villages and great payload, there's no draw. Like, Garrison can draw, like, a billion cards sometimes. And like I've seen games where like one player just kind of ignored this pile and the other player built a reasonable deck. They're behind because the other player's like greening or whatever. But it's like, okay, so now I'm going to buy a tent, and then I'm going to rotate, and then I'm going to take a garrison, and then I'm going to draw like 50 billion cards a turn because I'm gaining all these whatever, I don't know, random cards. You know, I've got it with Bandit Camp or some horse gainer or whatever, and it'll just draw like 20 cards in a turn. Like seriously, not 20, but 6 or 8 I've seen like many, many times. And there's like really good. But, and then Hillfort, like if Hillfort pops up, Hillfort's is pretty good to be a cantrip workshop. But it's just like, the whole thing is just like, I don't want to be the one who gets tent unless my deck is so much better built for the later forts than yours.
Right. You ever get like coppers on your spare buys when you have a garrison out and it's late enough in the game? You ever do that?
I don't know if I have, but like I think I have. Yeah, I think I've done it.
Last turn.
I think I've done it like once or twice. Like it hasn't come up that much, but yeah, I think it was like, well, if there's more than one more turn, I'm a monkey's uncle.
Yeah. Sick.
Marquis.
Yeah, good old Marquis. I would say that no one's opinion has changed on this card. But this is the first time that Wandering Winder and I are both on a podcast where we can talk about this card and the fact that our rating is 3 different. I gave this a 9 and he gave this a 6. And the community is like smack in the middle.
And I think probably the biggest deal about this is like you probably, again, it's like a conceptual difference. You probably generally rate draw cards higher than I do. Terminal draw cards.
I don't think so. I mean, this is draw with plus buy. I think maybe that combination I might rate higher than you.
Okay. Yeah. Like I think that there is any other draw with plus buy card that's better than, or that's worse than this?
I mean, there's Margraven Council Room and Barge.
And Wharf.
Those are the other ones. Oh, geez. I mean, Wharf is...
And Silk Merchant.
Ooh, Silky, yeah.
No, like, those are all really good, right?
They are, yeah. And that's why...
and Tragic Hero.
Yeah, good old T-Hero.
Yeah. And the comment section's going to leave the other 4 that we forgot about.
Yeah, leave a comment in the comment section.
Yeah, and there's a couple reasons probably why I'm not as warm on it. It's like it costs 6 and most of the other ones cost like 5. And that's not a huge difference, but it's not nothing. And then like if I'm already drawing with other stuff, the discard business of this is annoying sometimes. I mean, sometimes it just doesn't matter. And sometimes, like there was one game where I had village greens, and that is a combination, my friend. But
that seems pretty good, yeah.
But in general, like, do I want to get 4 copies of this? Not that often.
It's probably because you don't need 4 copies of it.
It's true.
To have your deck be good.
Oh, and this is like really sad against militias.
Yeah, that is pretty sad. I mean, I look at this card and I see Hunting Grounds with a buy. That's what I look at it as. And in the case where like what you really need is 15 or 20 cards in your hand to have a good turn,
then it's not as good, but that case is really rare.
But also, like, Marquis is still good in the deck you eventually want to build there, because unless you also have Hunting Grounds in your life, then you still, like, are happy to play 2 of these on a turn. You just don't want to draw 7 coppers and 8 silvers.
I think we probably agree that there is more diminishing returns on this card than there are on, like, random other smithies. Like, the first copy of this is a lot better than the second copy is a lot better than the third copy.
Yeah.
Great.
Cool.
Merchant Camp. Yeah.
Yep.
You went from 7 to 7. I went from probably something like 5 to 5. The community went from 4.5 to slightly less than 5.
Yeah, I mean, I really think this is just the fact that this is a village,
village.
that you can have at the start of your turn, and
Yeah.
I really don't think there's much else to
The only
the
thing I wanted
rating
to say
difference. I
about
like
this,
villages.
yeah, the only thing I wanted to say about this is like, remember that you can choose to not top deck it, and like a lot of the times, well, especially if you have like multiple copies of this, I think it's pretty rare to want to
Yeah,
top deck more than one.
I don't. I'd have to come up. I'd have to search really hard for a situation where I would want to top deck more than one merchant camp. Yeah.
Well, when you have the golden deck, that's 2 merchant camps and 3
And
tents.
3 tents. Yeah. Then you got to do it.
Yeah, and then you get hit by Urchin, and you're really sad.
Oh man, I hate Urchin.
What about Odysseys?
Yeah, let's talk about Odysseys, because like we were talking about this last episode and during the games, and like, man, there's some stuff to talk about here. I originally gave Odysseys an 8. I'm down now to a 6. You're at a 6, and the community took it from a low 6 to a high 6. I still don't feel like I've fully figured this pile out yet.
Yeah, I think I said to you last time, so Village is the most confusing one to me. The other ones,
Voyage, you mean?
yeah.
Okay.
I said Village, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, Village is not confusing to me. Voyage is the
Agreed.
most confusing one to me. Like the old map, I think I understand okay, except for the rotating bit, which I guess is probably pretty important, so maybe I don't understand it that well. Sunken Treasure, sure. Distant Shore, yeah.
Distant Shore.
Sure.
Sure.
Voyage, I think I said last time, it seems bad every time I get it, and it seems really good for my opponents every time they get it. And
Right.
and you were like, sounds like a skill issue, and I was like, yeah, it really does.
It really does.
I don't think I'm very good with this card.
I'll tell you, most of the reason that I dropped my rating down 2 points
Yeah.
is because of Voyage. Every time I see that card, I'm continuing to be disappointed by it. And I also have a problem that's not necessarily power level related, but I'll talk about it later if you have more to say about the pile.
Is it about Voyage?
Voyage is a shining example of it, but
Okay.
it's kind of about the whole pile.
So I want to talk a little bit about Voyagers. So I think part of the reason why it's confusing, and I think part of the reason why I think I probably undervalue it, I think other people do overvalue it though, is because like it looks like it says take an extra turn, but not really, man. Right? You're not really getting a
that
full
turn.
turn, right?
That turn always sucks. Like, so many extra turn cards, like all the other extra turn cards,
Yeah.
have something that if you can get around the thing, then you can have like a full good second turn.
Right. So like Seize the
Possession,
Day, the
mission,
thing is,
seize, outpost.
yeah. And Voyage, there are some cases where you're playing cards but not from your hand or something. Or the League of Bankers thing from the Kingdom at the opening bread. That's pretty rare, right? Usually it's kind of like a non-terminal workshop with some weird differences that make it not like workshop. And they do stack, kind of. But yeah, I don't know. It's just like it's a lot worse than an extra turn. And probably I think my issue is I look at it and I'm like, that's so much worse than an extra turn. And I kind of write it off. Whereas it's sometimes like, okay, well, it's a lot worse than an extra turn. But sometimes your workshop adjacent card is still, pretty decent.
Right. Yeah, the thing here's my thing with Voyage and Odysseys and Allies.
Allies
Voyage
the
gives you-
expansion or Allies the card type?
The expansion.
Great.
So, like, Voyage can be throned, or you can just play a bunch of them and get that many turns. And that's not fun. That's not fun for the person whose turn it isn't. It's barely fun for the person whose turn it is. especially because so many of those turns just really suck.
You know,
And I know they play tested it, and they said that this is probably okay balance wise. And Donald X was probably like, I want to print a card that stacks extra turns and have it be okay balance wise. And yeah, you probably did it, bro. I hope you're happy with yourself because this card isn't fun, and so this pile isn't fun. And there's 4 freaking cards in this pile. So it's that much more fiddly.
You know,
and then there's 7 piles like this in Allies.
wait, are
Why
there
do we
actually
need
7?
this?
I thought there were only 4.
I think there's 7 split piles in Allies.
Oh.
It's so many. Every time I see a game with one of those split piles in it, I'm just like, oh god, another game with all of these cards in it? What do all these cards do? What are all the things that these cards can do? One of them gives me plus buy-in junks. The other one gives me draw and gainy bits. The other one is just kind of fiddly deck control. This one gains cards, kind of. Like,
So, like,
why?
complexity creep.
Yes. The complexity on Voyage does not pay for itself. The complexity on this pile and any other split pile in Allies does not pay for itself. And
Would you say that the complexity is creepy?
yeah, I would.
So
And
like
it's just
the
so
other
upsetting because
the
I
other split
wasn't
pile
there
that we're not even going to talk about was like I think it's Wizards something. The one where
Yeah.
Lich is the bottom card, right?
Wizards.
Yeah. So like you it's funny because you were talking about how it's not fun when your opponent takes like 4 turns in a row, which is like an
Yeah.
issue with the Voyagers, right?
Yeah.
But I gotta tell you, I had a game earlier this week where my opponent, well,
Lich and
so it was,
Voyage.
I opened with 3 cards. How did I open with 3 cards? It was like Messenger or something.
Okay.
So I opened with 3 cards. All 3 of them missed the shuffle. So like my next 10 cards were my 10 starting cards, and all 3 missed the
feels
shuffle. I'm
good.
like, oh man, this is so terrible. But then my opponent got all the Liches with Lurker, and then just played them all like multiple times. So I got like
Wow.
4 turns in a row. Well, I would have had 4 turns in a row twice, except I won after the second one of like halfway through the second set of 4 consecutive turns.
All right.
That felt pretty good, and I didn't feel bad for my opponent because they didn't have to
They did
game
it to
those Liches.
themselves.
They didn't have to play those Liches. They did it themselves. So that's just my
Wow.
PSA. Like, don't play Lich unless you're winning this turn. Okay, thanks, bye.
Or you have Voyage.
Or sure, there's probably a few ways that you can mitigate the downside.
Yeah. Play 3 Liches, 3 Voyages.
Play 1 Lich and buy a mission, and that works, right?
Something, yeah.
I don't know. Pirate.
Pirate. I had given this a 6 before. I moved it up to an 8.
I had given this a 4 before. I moved it up to a 7.
Yeah. And the community is giving it a 5.3.
Because they're
Get
wrong.
with the program, bro. Like you're
Just-
living 4 months ago. Come on.
It's strong payload, man.
This card's fucking great, man.
Like, pirate money is pretty strong, but also you just get to where you're drawing your deck and you're like, well, I'm going to need to add some payload. Great, I'll get a small number of pirates, and now I don't need to buy more payload because my pirates are just going to get me those golds or, forbid whatever other treasures are better. And I had this one time the other day where my opponent gained silvers with their pirates, and I was very confused. But then they
Probably
remade
don't do
them,
that.
and they wanted to get 4s, I guess.
That's still weird.
I mean, like, it kind of made sense because they didn't really need more money at that point.
Okay.
Like trying to remake into eventually duchies, I think. Well, it didn't win them the game, but it's like sometimes you'll do that. Sometimes Fountain's on the board, and I'm going to gain a copper with my pirate.
I love buying a copper with an extra buy so I can play my pirate.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It feels so good. This card's great.
Yeah. Like,
Anyway.
it's not like the be-all and end-all. It's not a King's Court level card, but we didn't give it a 10, people.
Yeah, I just gave it an 8. This is the best payload gaining like Dominion has probably. It's so good.
Skirmisher.
Skirmisher.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you went from a 6 to a 7, and I think I went from, again, I didn't give this a number rating before, but I thought it was going to be mediocre, and I'm now also at a 7. And the community went up like half a point from a high 5 to a low 6. Yeah, so,
Militia's really strong.
and this, it's like, if you just buy one of these every turn, it's like, well, how much are you really improving your deck? And the answer is, pretty decently, but like your opponent can't do anything. So
Yeah.
militia effects are really strong. And then like, oh, the pile runs out. Well, sometimes there's other attacks, but even when there's not, it's like, okay, but for the past 8 turns, your opponent hasn't done anything. You have a deck full of, peddlers, which is not the most amazing thing ever, but your opponent hasn't done anything because militia attacks are strong.
Yeah, it's just so easy to just incidentally get one of these every turn while you're doing other stuff.
And
in a lot of cases.
And again, I have had it snowball multiple times where it's like, I can't hit 5 because my opponent keeps getting skirmishers, and it just feels awful.
Yeah. And I guess the one thing I do like is kind of in the end game, where it's like, oh, I didn't hit 8, but I have 5. Do I get a duchy, or do I get a skirmisher just to attack my opponent?
Would you say that decision is a little bit crunchy?
I was just going to use that word. Am I that predictable?
No, I'm actually, I did not think, I think it was, I thought, oh, that's the kind of thing Adam would say, but I didn't think you were going to say it just now.
Oh, yeah. Crunchy like this popcorn.
Souk.
Souk.
You don't want to put popcorn in your soup, but you do want to buy souk, I think, because I went from a 7 to an 8. But you disagree because you went from a 4 to a 4.
I made a butternut squash bisque one time that is amazing with popcorn in it. For the record.
I will believe you.
Anyway, 7 seemed a little nuts to me.
Yeah.
And you've gone the wrong direction. Explain
No.
yourself.
So I went the right direction from 8. This card is, admittedly, so it's been small sample for me, but like every board this has been on, it's been very good. Sometimes I'm only getting 1 or 2, and I'm really leveraging the trashing. Sometimes I'm getting a whole bunch. It's been surprisingly effective payload. Like, it's making 3, 4, 5, 6 money, way more than I would have thought. And maybe it's just like I've had some really good boards for it, but the combination of the trashing, it's like been a star card in like every game that I've had it, and it's just so nice. The trashing has been really good. The payload has been not amazing, but good and occasionally amazing. Like there's a lot of ways. It's kind of surprising. I've found there are a lot of ways to synergize with one half of the card or the other. Whether that's like you swap it out for a changeling, or you set other cards aside with church, so your hand size is smaller, or I don't know. It's just like so often it's like there's something to do with this card.
The only one I've ever had was a game with Villa.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Because if you want to make money and you have a souk in hand, well, you just don't play your souk and then you play your treasures and you buy a Villa and then play your souk, and it's like, well...
I would recommend playing the Villa before playing the souk.
Sure, of
usually.
Course. That seems pretty good, yeah.
Tide pools.
Okay,
do you have more?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I don't. I stick with the 4.
Great. Tide pools. You went from a 1 to a 1. I went from a 4 to a 2. But I think I'm closer to 3 than 1.
I mean, when the numbers get this low, I think... I mean, the reason I gave it a 1 is I have criteria for cards that are that bad. And we used to have cards this bad in Dominion before they got taken away.
Like Scout and Thief?
I mean, those are worse than this. Thief is probably better than this. But Scout, definitely not. But a 1 out of 10 is like, this card makes most decks worse.
Yeah.
That's Tide Pools right there. That's like my definition of a 1 out of 10.
I
And
agree
like,
with that. It's
I
weird
respect that you give it a different number, but still think the same thing, you know?
because like you look at the card, or I looked at. I think this is why I gave it a 4. I'm like, I looked at the card. I'm like, well, it's like Forum, but it's split over 2 turns. That can't be that. But like Forum's pretty good, right? This can't be that bad. It's bad.
It's that bad.
It's bad. So there's things you can do with it. There's guide, right?
The Guide is the one. I think there's some other thing that does the same thing as Guide. One of the allies,
Yeah, there's the desert guides, right?
probably.
Yeah, I think it's desert guides.
I
That's a
think
similar
that's it.
thing. There have been some weird, I don't know. I had a game with Village Green in this. That was
Okay.
okay. I see, but I mean that also had Marquee in it, and like
So why do you
was
need Tide
so
Pools? Yeah.
good for Village Green. Anyway, but I think there are going to be some cases where you get like one copy or one copy per turn of this, and it's fine. And then most of
Yeah,
the
that
time you get 0 copies of it, and you laugh when your opponent gets them. And then 3% of the time there's guide or something, and it's very good. And yeah,
the whole thing of you get 1 or 2 in the end game. The more I play with this card, the more I think that's overblown.
I have done it. I think once or twice, but it's like it wasn't important. It was like, yeah, it's probably a little better than not doing it, but it wasn't like, oh man, this is what's gonna save the game for me.
Yeah, and that's the best case for this card. Yeah, pass.
Well, other than like the mega guide combo.
Yes, of course.
Great,
Guide
great.
and Desert. Cool. So we both gave this a 6 initially,
Yeah.
and I've gone up to 8. You've gone up to 7. The community is at 7. This card is the synergies it has, so that makes it very hard to rate.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I increased the number is because those synergies happened a lot more of the time than I originally thought it would.
Yeah, and basically, there's very, very frequently going to be a synergy of pretty good effect.
Yeah.
I'm not just talking about like, oh, well, now my workshop is a cantrip if I need it to be, which is actually already
That's
like
great,
pretty
yeah.
decent, yeah.
Yeah.
But like, you just usually big percentage of the time going to be a better synergy than that.
I'm going to say that happens more than half the time by a significant margin.
I would say that it happens more than 55% of the time by
Wow.
a significant
Ooh.
margin.
All right. Yep. You got me there. Can't argue with that. Let's talk about Townsfolk.
Let's talk about Townsfolk.
Okay. So you gave it a 5.
Yeah.
The community went from 5 down to 4.5.
Yeah.
And I went from 9 down to 8.
Yeah.
It's a big difference.
It's kind of weird because like earlier we were talking about whichever one has Herb Gatherer in it was the Otters.
Mm-hmm.
This is the other thing about all these split piles. I can never remember the name of them.
Yeah.
There's just
This is the
whatever.
Town Crier pile. That
Right,
was the
exactly.
Herb Gatherer pile.
Yes. So like I like Town Crier. I feel like you can open with Town Crier. Certainly
Yeah.
like if you have 2, but like even if you have a 3/4, opening with Town Crier quite a bit is like
Yeah.
pretty
It's
good. Yeah.
I'm happy to do it.
Having said, and that was the biggest thing, like the thing about that pile for me was that like I don't want to open Herb Gatherer very much, so I don't think the pile's very good. And here it's like I want to open Town Crier reasonably often, but I still don't think the pile is. I think the pile's better than the other pile, but I don't think the pile's that great. And I just think like none of the cards seems super high impact to me.
I think Elder and Blacksmith together. I mean, that's what the pile's about. Blacksmith by itself can find its place in decks, and that's fine if you can get like a village or it has that draw to 6 option, which meh. But like you put that with
I mean,
Elder,
sometimes that does
and
something.
yeah, and it does something more often with Elder around.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't think Elder is all that great with any other card besides Blacksmith.
Uh,
It would have been great with Barge or Village Green, and if you read the cards, that's it would work, but for some reason it doesn't.
oh. I. It seems to me like there's probably some other card besides Blacksmith that should also work pretty well. Like Minion? Probably okay with Minion. But
I guess.
but it's like the thing with this and Minion is you probably only getting Elder like after all the minions are gone.
And time Blacksmith isn't really good in that deck either.
Right. Yeah, no. I mean, it's not horrible, but like how bad can a cantrip be? But um yeah, I don't know.
Pretty
The Elder and Blacksmith thing, yes, it can be bad. That's true. The Elder and Blacksmith thing, it just hasn't impressed me that, like, don't get me wrong, it's okay sometimes, but it hasn't been like, wow, this is a strong just like, so you have 2 cards and the end result is like you're up a card, right? And you made 2 money, which is good. I don't
A
know.
lot of times I find myself being up 2 cards. If I play Elder and Blacksmith, I have $2 and I'm up 2 cards.
Yeah, you can do the
I
draw
played
to
2
6
cards, I drew
and
4 cards, and I also got $2.
okay.
Yeah, because a lot of times you can draw to 6 and get the card in action.
Okay.
I don't know. I think 5 is too low. I could see 8 being a little too high. I could see this being a 7. 5 seems very far away from what I think this should be.
We probably both agree that Miller is totally yawn.
Garbage.
Oh, I've gained it sometimes, but it's like it's like, oh, would Border Guard have been pretty much just as good here? Yeah, probably better. Great.
Yeah. Trash garbage.
Underling.
Underling. So, I went from a 6 to an 8. I remember throwing my hands up and saying, I don't know how to rate this card. And of course, I still don't know how to rate this card, but favors are pretty good.
So yeah, I'm on a 5, and my. So this is why on contract that I thought it was going to be about the favors, because I knew we were 3 apart here, and this is really how good are favors. I throw my hands up.
See, here's the thing. Underling, I think, is the best way to get a big pile of favors. If I want a ton of favors and I want an ally and a liaison card to get me those favors, Underling is your guy, right?
Sometimes broker, but yeah, reliably probably Underling.
Yeah. And so sometimes you don't need a big pile of favors, but that's okay. But when you do need a big pile of favors, the payoff is huge. And Underling is the guy to get you there.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
I gave it an 8. And
I
still question mark.
I certainly think that there are definitely times where this card is 8 or better, and I also think there are times where this is like a 0.
Yeah, but it's obvious, right?
Yeah,
It's
but,
obvious
like,
that it's not going to be good, and then you get silver, and
sure,
that's okay.
but like, what does that do to my rating? I don't know.
I mean, I gave King's Court a 10, and it has that issue, and of course, it's probably a lot less frequent with King's Court, but still.
Well, I mean, you didn't give this a 10. You only gave it an 8.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. Just don't worry about the rating on this. Look at the board. You'll know.
Yeah. Be good at Dominion. Play good Dominion.
War chest.
A Dominion podcast.
You want to go? You want to take war chest?
I don't know. I don't have that much to say about it. I went from a 5 to a 6.
Yeah.
The community's at about 6.5. My opinion hasn't changed that much, although I do think this is maybe a notch worse than you do.
Yeah. Well, I'm at a 7 from a 7. I still don't. This is kind of like Voyage for me, where it's like, it seems my opponents make better use out of it than I do. It sounds like a skill issue.
I've never really seen anyone make that good a use out of this card.
I've had multiple boards where it's like, oh, I'm just gonna get the other 5, and my opponents get war chest, and then like 4 turns later, I'm like, man, I should have gotten the war chest. And it feels... And then sometimes, like, I get a couple war chests. It's like, oh, I got too many war chests. It's just like, I don't know. Like, it's very hard for me to know, for some reason. I don't really understand why. But, like, when do I want to get this, or when do I want to get the other 5s first? And it's just... yeah, I don't know. I have seen games where, like, 3 of these were good, which is probably not that common.
A lot of war chests.
1 I have found to usually be pretty good. 2, sometimes yes, sometimes no. I think the big thing is that you might not realize just looking at it is you can still buy the cards they block.
Yeah.
And so that is like, it's so much better than because, like, okay, you play a war chest, they block one thing, you gain the other, and then you buy the thing they blocked, and you're just happy.
You still have a good turn.
Yeah, you're just happy whatever they block, right?
You play contraband and you're not having a good turn.
No, contraband, and you're just like, you've shot yourself in the foot entirely, right? Great. Finally, we have wheelwright.
All right, what do you have to say to me about wheelwright?
Yeah, I just want to say that, so, like, when we talked about this before, I outlined the, like, magical Christmas land dream where you draw a bunch of, you, like, have a bunch of deck control, you draw a bunch of cards, you have some overdraw, and you, like, wheelwright for wheelwright for more draw, wheelwright for wheelwright for more draw, and, like, it's not quite a loop because you're, like, losing cards every time. But you do some loopish stuff. And, like, you go from, like, oh, well, I'm drawing my deck and I have, or I'm, you know, slightly more than drawing my deck with, like, 2 wheelwrights, to I've emptied 3 piles in, like, 3 turns.
In my game, there was Triumph. And I got, like, 19 points from
right.
4th Triumph on that turn. Like, that felt pretty good.
So, yeah, I had one the other day where the way I was drawing cards was researching golds that I was getting from, like, Bandit.
Okay.
But the key thing there was that there was, what's the landmark where you get a point for every card in the empty pile?
Tower.
Yeah, there was Tower. I'm great with names.
Did you get Tower golds?
I did not get golds, because that would have taken forever. Also, this can't gain golds.
Yeah, well, Bandit can.
Right, but, like, I couldn't play that many bandits. No, but okay. I got Tower on this, and Research, and Research was, like, the last one, just because it's like, well, I need to empty some 3rd pile now. Guess it'll be that one. And it's just like, and it's just like, she just shreds piles so fast. That doesn't happen that often, because you do need, like, extra whatever, and you need you need some reason for it to be worth it, whether it's eventually you turn to gaining other payload, or Triumph, or Tower, right? You need something to do with it. I think pretty often there is something to do with it, but you also need the time and the extra draw and there not to be something better and blah, blah, blah. It's not forever, but, oh, does it feel great when it happens? It feels great.
Yeah. It felt good when I had that one game where it was good.
Yeah.
And every other game, I just haven't bought it.
Cool.
Well, that's all the cards we wanted to talk about. There's 19 of them. Hope you liked that. And now...
Some of them had 4 cards in the pile, so it was actually, like, 28 cards.
Yeah.
Because there's too many cards in the cards. And yo, dog, I heard you like cards, so we put some cards in your cards, and cards.
Cards, yeah.
Thanks, Exhibit.
Yeah. So, do you want to talk about this other kingdom we have in front of us?
This other bready kingdom?
Yeah.
Sure.
I'll read the cards in it. So we have Fool's Gold, Apothecary, Amulet, Leprechaun, Shantytown, Tiara, Library, War Chest, Wharf, Altar, Advance, and Wolf Den. And this game has both shelters and colonies. One more time for our audio-only listeners. Fool's Gold, Apothecary, Amulet, Leprechaun, Shantytown, Tiara, Library, War Chest, Wharf, Altar, and there's Advance, and Wolf Den, and we have Shelters and Colonies. So, Advanced Necropolis,
Into Altar.
obvious. You're probably getting an Altar. Yeah, seems pretty decent.
Yeah.
And then with the 5 on your other hand, what are you getting? Are you just slamming the Wharf, or do you just get an Amulet anyway?
Do I have 5 on my other hand?
Yeah, I have 5. I have a 5/2 on this board every time.
Oh, then I think I'm taking the Wharf. Cause like I don't think Amulet's that important because I'm opening Altar.
I would get the Amulet if I didn't have 5.
I'm not sure that I would. I think I would get like Shantytown or
Shantytown.
Tiara. Well, I'm gonna want eventually what I want to build here is get a lot of wharves, get some Shantytowns so I can play a lot of wharves, and then get a bunch of Fool's Golds and Tiaras and maybe some Platinums, and then hey, the game is ending, so I should probably score.
Yeah.
Do I want a Leprechaun? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. Doesn't seem that important. I want a lot of Wharves. I want Fool's Golds and Tiaras and at least a couple Shantytowns so I can play more Wharves and my Altar. And eventually, I don't know, maybe I'll advance the Altar away because it's minus 3 points and eventually I'm going to run out of junk to trash. But I don't think I want the Amulet because I'm just going to trash all my stuff to Altar anyway.
Yeah, so I think Shantytown and Wharf is not strong enough draw, especially on a colony board, that you just want to not go for a little bit faster thinning with Amulet. I think Amulet's important. I definitely want it with my Altar.
Oh, yeah.
And you're guaranteed to be able to do that, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can't.
Yeah, you're guaranteed.
You can't have a
to
2 that isn't your hand with the Necropolis.
Yeah. On a 5, I would think a lot. I would strongly consider War Chest, but I don't know. I really don't like opening Wharf, and I know that's just my own personal thing. I can see how Wharf is probably good, but I would still strongly consider Amulet.
I don't think I want to touch War Chest here because it's just going to name Wharf like the first 14 turns of the game. And
you can still get a Shantytown.
That is just not exciting for my...
Tiara, Fool's Gold.
Yeah, I just, I'd rather have the Wharf, which is going to, draw me 2 cards and let me buy one of those cards anyway, I think. Probably also, I should mention, you probably do want to watch out for pileouts because the Wharves are probably going to run because they're great, and the Fool's Golds are probably going to run because they're pretty good and they're cheap. You have a lot of buys from Wharves and Tiaras, and then you also have Advance to empty whatever other pile, like Shantytowns could get low or whatever. So it would not surprise me, especially if both players are going for a strategy like this, that pileouts become a thing.
I suppose
fairly rapidly, but
and maybe the whole Tiara Fool's Gold to get up to Platinum, then Tiara Platinum thing doesn't come into play because the game's over. Sure, that seems reasonable.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to have time for Platinum because...
yeah, it depends on what your opponent does, but for sure.
Yeah. And Tiara is going to let me top deck like Wharf and Shantytown some turns in a row or something. I don't know.
Yeah, so I think there is a little bit of disagreement. I really like Amulet. I think I want Amulet for sure.
Okay.
And it seems like you don't.
I don't.
And I think don't count War Chest out. I'm not positive on that one.
I'm counting it out.
War Chest isn't crazy.
I'm counting it out. I'm not sure about Leprechaun, though.
Not sure about Leppy. I think Library and Apothecary, not interested.
Well, Apothecary especially, I don't want to touch Potion. This seems like so much. Especially because, I am, one way or another, I'm going to be trashing my coppers, right?
Coppers are so stupid, yeah.
Yeah. And Library is just why would I do that when I have Wharves?
Yeah. Seems like a worse card than Wharf, yeah. Yeah. So, I think a little bit of spiciness here.
I'm probably never touching silver.
Seems unlikely with Fool's Gold.
Like,
especially
I don't know.
Tiara.
If you have an amulet, maybe you'll eventually gain some silvers off it.
Seems unlikely. I just want Fool's Golds and Tiaras.
Or maybe you just advance it once you're done with it.
That seems
More likely.
like a thing
Yeah.
that I might do. Yeah, a little bit of spiciness, a little bit of disagreement. Let us know what you think about Amulet and maybe War Chest and Leprechaun on this board. Let us know what you think about our...
Shantytown.
Yeah,
Or you're
Shantytown
probably
is-
getting Shantytown at some point, because...
Yeah, I think you have to.
Yeah.
Get a couple more wharfs into play. But,
Let us know if you think, no, you need to keep that necropolis because you're going to be village limited.
maybe. Has that library synergy. Yeah.
Yeah, if you think that, you're wrong, but tell us anyway.
Well, I'll try a game like that. I'll give it a shot.
Okay.
So he gets a free win. Bet you can't wait.
Woo!
Um,
You want to
and,
resign on turn 3, or you want to wait a few more turns?
No. 8 or 9.
Okay.
I'll play that one out, man.
Great.
Don't you worry. I'm there for you, listeners.
Don't you
I'm there for
worry.
you. Yeah, and if you want to talk about some of the ratings we talked about in the meat portion of this episode, give us a shout out. Go to the comment section, leave a comment there. If you're a YouTube listener, lots of ways to get a hold of us. Just go to adamhorton.com. Got links to the forums, the Discord, all the other contact information that you could possibly want for us. We'd like to hear from you. Thanks for sticking with us. I know our release schedule is not regular in any way, and it's not going to be for a while, but we're still going to try and put out some content. I got a new job. I'll be able to have a life again, so looking forward to that. Got anything else to say?
Nitwit, blubber, oddment, no.
Hey, what's up?
Yo,
Uh,
Adam let me out of the basement.
yes, I did.
I have a very brief window, and I'm gonna try to escape.
Yeah,
But
but
before that-
first,
Yeah,
he brought me these things. It's so nice of him. He's so thoughtful.
yeah.
And they're called Starburst Swirlers. Okay, and I have this one, and I have this one, and we're gonna try them together.
I've actually already tried both of them, so these are all you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know what I think.
Okay. These are gonna be gross, aren't they? I'm excited.
No,
Are they spicy?
no. Well, I don't know what you'll think, but
Thanks for that.
no,
Okay,
they're
trying
not
to open it,
spicy. I
and
don't think.
It says tear here. I did, and it didn't work.
No, they're very hard to open. Like
So we cut you out of the video because nobody wants to see you.
some people might want to know where I am and
The
call,
top of this head is here.
and call for help, please.
It's kind of hard.
Yeah,
Starburst usually are.
it's difficult.
If they're like not stored properly, they are.
If you keep them in the sun, they're not.
Yeah. So, what do you think? What are you experiencing right now?
It tastes like I got trick or treat candy that was a year old and was Starburst.
Yeah, that kind of is. I mean, I thought they were like a large cylindrical Starburst, but they have an interesting flavor. I actually think that the one that you just had is the good one, and then you're about to have the not as good one. So this will be a nice change of pace.
Oh, this one, you can actually tell, like this one, the one I tried was pink and different pink. Can't really see much of a swirl. I mean, it's there, but this one, look at that,
Yeah,
yellow and pink.
very clear.
Oh, this one's supple and chewy. I
Yeah.
think maybe the wrapper on this one wasn't sealed right.
Well, you had a hard time getting through it, so
Mm-hmm. This one doesn't taste as good.
No.
The texture's nice. This is like a lemon Starburst. This is like...
Well, it's like a lemon Starburst plus some chemicals. That's the thing. Is like lemon Starbursts are just pleasant and lemony. This is like lemon Starburst plus some pledge. Yeah. So
I'm glad we got to have this experience.
yeah. Now back to that high level Dominion strategy.